Hewitt, Steve I am John Lias, Director of Programming for the convention, and I'm thrilled to have Professor Delores Fisher and Ian P. Duckett as my guests today, two huge Doctor Who fans. Professor Fisher is a professor at San Diego State University, and Ian is a visual artist and classically trained actor, fan of the science fiction and fantasy genres, and founder and moderator of the Facebook group Pulp Culture, a popular culture group. But instead of me giving you information about Delores and Ian, how about we let them share more details about themselves and how they got interested in Doctor Who. Delores, Ian, take it away.
All right, so thank you, John. Ian, did you want to go first, or you're gonna?
No. I'll let you go first, please.
Okay. I got interested in Doctor Who when I was a child. I've always loved science fiction. I've always enjoyed, when I hear conversations about the cheesy special effects in the beginning. I love cheesy special effects. I mean, I like the really new ones now, but I mean, come on, I grew up in the era of the 50-foot woman, right? And so, I love that kind of thing. And I started watching and realized that one of the movies that made an impact on me wasn't part of the series, and that was, the Daleks movie with Peter Cushing, I guess it was, and I was like, oh, wow. Because for me as a child, I thought all of it flowed together, and it was all a whole world, and the world on TV was the world in film, and I just, my whole imagination when it comes to suspending belief, believing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At that time, my parents were very indulgent. I would run around in a cape. It was one of those things where you look at your child and go, okay. And I was terrified of the Daleks. I was terrified of robots. And so, I would try and buy little robots and things like that. And the storylines for me didn't quite make sense as a child, but all I knew was that there was this fantastic old man who was traveling around the galaxy, and yes, you could travel around the galaxy. So for me, getting involved with Doctor Who as a child was part of my parents just saying, okay, she likes science fiction, it's okay, let her, run around the house and do that kind of thing. So I got into it really early. As for what I do now, I had started doing research, especially in terms of hip hop culture and how hip hop culture began to impact the world in general. Found out that a lot of rappers and hip hoppers were huge game fans. They were huge science fiction fans, huge comic fans, huge graphic novel fans, and started beginning to get a broader picture of the world joined and united in hip hop culture. And there was also that undercurrent, that underlying culture of, oh yeah, and by the way, we like comics too. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, and so in terms of science fiction, growing up in San Diego as a kid, we had a lot of the syndicated television channels. So you had SCTV Channel 6, and they'd show all of these very eclectic and strange movies. Mm-hmm. And so between that and public television, I got to watch lots of science fiction. I got to watch a lot of classic things like Forbidden Planet and The Day the Earth Stood Still. And so, and those were my go-tos. Plus I loved classic old movies. So I would watch these things. And then in the 70s, the early 70s, sort of mid 70s, British TV, things like Monty Python and Doctor Who started showing up on American television. And, I loved anything with spaceship. I'm all about it. I was all about it. Okay, spaceships, you got me. Time machines, you got me. I'm there. So here was a character, Tom Baker. Tom Baker is my Doctor Who. But he was my first introduction to Doctor Who and that strange universe that he occupied. And it was interesting because it was serial, to where now Doctor Who's kind of more episodic. it was serial. So, let's say if you're talking about the pyramids of Mars, you would see maybe the first one, but then you'd have to wait to see the next one. And you know how it is with syndicated television. Sometimes they don't put things in order. So you had to watch a lot of episodes of Doctor Who to maybe get the whole story of that particular serial. And so that was my introduction to Doctor Who. It was that exploration. And then my attendance of the comic conventions where there were fans, there were other people who knew about the show. And so, and this is pre-internet. This is before you could go and Wikipedia something.
Yeah.
So there were fans there and they could tell you about it. And, we're at the dawn of early video recordings, VHS, that sort of thing. So somebody who was, once you found your Whovian amongst your friends, you went and you got their videos. So you got their tapes, you got their movies. And so that's how I finally got to see one of my favorite Tom Bakers, which is the Genesis of the Daleks. Was one of and it's a great one of the serials. It's a great serial. And so I got to see that and I realized, I said, oh my gosh, there's so much to this Doctor Who character. And from there, I began to kind of reverse engineer and find more. And I got to find out about William Hartnell and I got to find out of other different characters. And so that was my introduction to Doctor Who, sort of in a sense of once I went to Comic-Con, it's like this entire world opened up. It was like Gallifrey opened up for me because it was there. And there were people who knew about it. So any crazy question I had to ask about it, there was someone who knew about it and probably knew about it in great detail. And then finally, as we enter our era, because of what the internet affords us, what it allows us to do, I'm better able now to maybe go back and find those earlier episodes that I didn't get to see, or find out some arcana about the master or that sort of thing. So that's my discovery of that. But I'm a lifelong science fiction fantasy fan, and I discovered Doctor Who in the 70s.
Now, Delores, did you get involved with Doctor Who for starting with the Fourth Doctor or somewhere thereafter?
I actually started looking at I guess they must have been reruns, the very first Doctor, getting into the TARDIS with Susan. And, Susan they looked like to me a college student because I was basically a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And I had like no reality in terms of Susan and the age of the Doctor, except that he was an older man. And I eventually, because of the funkiness of Tom Baker, when I was older, I loved that funkiness of Tom Baker. When I came back to the series with the scarf, to me, he seemed like the personification of all the older kids, quote, the hippie kind of funkiness, right, of the 70s era. To me, in terms of who and what he was, I just looked at him as a kind of older hippie, because that's what he seemed like to me. The scarf, the clothing was such a thing that for each of them, the costuming for me would throw me off, and I would imagine them in some sort of other universe, some sort of other time slot. I just enjoyed from being a child, and then, looking at it later with the Tom Baker series, it just ran together. And there was a period when I didn't look at Doctor Who or think about Doctor Who. I was doing my own endeavors in beginning show business and blah blah blah. So I was a little bit away from it and then came back to it. So
yeah. I've made the joke in the past in other videos and at the convention that my first exposure to Doctor Who was back in 1990 on the KPBS or the PBS station in Tucson, Arizona. I was going to college. My first image of the Doctor was the Fourth Doctor, although I didn't know it at the time. This man who had this scarf that seemed to just go on forever. And he was fighting these salt and pepper shakers for some reason that could not climb upstairs. And at the time, Star Wars and Star Trek were the big thing. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to give this a shot. But luckily enough, I rediscovered Doctor Who many years later and fell in love with it. And the rest is history. Now, let's delve a little bit more into the show itself.
Mhm.
I want to get both of your thoughts on how minority representation in the show has evolved over time from back in the day when the first Doctor first started to modern day, and in
Yeah.
particular, African American representation. So I'm not sure which would you like to start.
It's really amazing because you see, like in the background, extras who happen to be black. And at that time, there was always this look, there's a black person. Hey, come here, come here. And it would be enough. If you remember, it would be enough to get people to come and watch, right? Oh, there's a minority that look. And again, a lot of times they were just extras in the background. And eventually, with the quote more modern generation, you had the companions but in the beginning it wasn't like that. They were peppered throughout, and they didn't always have huge roles, or else they got killed. Right. And so it kind of followed the stereotypical pattern of what happened to minorities. And we had a joke, which was, okay, let's wait and see how long they're going to last, right? So you would go 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, there he goes, and boom, it was like that old Star Trek thing of the workman. As soon as you saw the workman, you knew the workman would die within the first few minutes of the episode. So it evolved from that to more meatier roles rather than just someone who appeared in the beginning and then they got shot and killed, or they got thrown down a cliff or whatever. So it's really nice to see the meatier, more fleshed out people rather than two-dimensional stereotypes or someone in the background who's an extra. So that's how I feel about it.
So the red shirt mentality, which says that, and this is Black History Month, so I gotta bring that out.
Okay.
It's an important part of this dialogue. There is a trope that's called the Noble Negro, where you had a Black person, and it could be any ethnicity or woman, whose task it was to ensure that the audience understood the nature of sacrifice by someone dying. And so that was a character that was going to die. And, when you watch movies and TV shows, sometimes with Black people, what they do is they talk back to the television. They start going, no, don't go in that room. No, don't do that. You're going to get...
Yeah, my mom used to do that. No, watch, Dolores, watch.
Yeah, exactly. So what you would be doing is you found yourself, because here it was, you finally saw someone of your ethnicity in the episode, and you wanted them to survive because you're like, oh, good, here we are, we're in the future, and we're going to survive. And so you'd see this character going into a place of great danger, and you'd be going, no, don't do this. And of course, you knew they were going to die, which inevitably they did. And so we've gone from that to where companions of the Doctor are people of color.
Yeah.
They have integral and important parts of the episode or of the show, and they don't necessarily have to die. And because it's now become more that there's a story arc, because the early Doctor Who's are episodic. If there's a story arc, that character may show up again.
Yeah.
The Doctor may go back, space-time, parallel dimensions. The Doctor may interact with that character again. So then what you get to have is that character that you liked and enjoyed and you were glad to see them. He revisits the episode, and that's what really makes it exciting now, because it's not just sort of a one-off. It's not sort of a large thing. And really quick to say this, in the 70s, I understood, in England, there are not necessarily a lot of Black actors of that period. So you didn't see a lot of them in the episode, or you didn't see a lot of them in the serial. But now, because their society has become more diverse, as the world is becoming more diverse, you see more diverse casting. You see more non-traditional casting. And it makes for an interesting thing. An alien world with Black people. And that's an interesting thing to see, to witness.
Yeah. And I had written myself some notes so I wouldn't forget, because there were certain things that I wanted to make sure that I brought up, and because once he and I get talking, we start rambling, right?
Oh yeah.
It's really bad. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, back to even when we present together, it's like, yeah, let's get back to where we're in. But when you think of Bill and you think of the other characters and ways in which they interact with the doctor, how do I put this? I'm trying to be PC. As they become more and more fleshed out people, the faults are more real, right? The ties are realer. The emotions are more real. It isn't just a kind of caricature of a Black person. There's a young woman who's studying to be a doctor, who makes a choice instead of, oh well, she's there, she's on the TARDIS, she has no name, okay, and she dies, or she's kicked out, or whatever. It's more fully developed, and that's really nice to see. And I definitely wanted to make sure that I said that, because you see so many cutbacks in characters. If I may use Lieutenant Uhuru. After a while, all she did on Star Trek was, yes, Captain, or, let me connect you. Or it was just like a glorified, well, just like, a glorified operator after a while. And so to see the BBC writers, to see, as it progresses, that fleshing out of the characters, that was really, 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 for me, gratifying, especially being older now. And as I again revisit every now and then, I'll sit down and binge watch, right? And go, wow, I didn't see that last time. Okay, all right, wow. So yeah.
It's like Clara has that relationship with with that boyfriend, his name Mickey, who is he ultimately becomes a Cyberman, but she has a relationship with him, and his race, his ethnicity has nothing to do with that. They are two characters in a story. It's kind of like Ripley in Alien. She is a woman, but her femininity has nothing to do with what her character's arc and story is. And so you start seeing that happening with the writing of the series. And it's one of those things where you want to give kudos to our British cousins. You say, okay, look at that. That's brilliant writing. You want the Americans to watch more of this programming, because you're going, look at what they're doing. If somebody from a far and distant planet who can travel through dimensions has people around him and they're three-dimensional, surely our films and our television media can reflect that.
Yeah. And when we think about what comprises Blackness, right? Or being an African-derived person, that whole history of slavery is different from what we have in the United States. So the ways in which we received the characters, and Ian and I were talking about this last night, were probably way different from the way the characters were received and appreciated in Britain. And when you get to the whole thing of the Time Lords, I mean, how do you look at aliens, quote unquote, who have a darker complexion, but they don't have that tie into slavery that we have almost globally on Terra? It's not there. So how do we relate to it? How does this impact young children who make that realization that, oh my goodness, these are not Black people who were, brought in a celestial slave ship, to Gallifrey. This is not what this is about. These are people who are darker complexion. How do we relate to them? What do we say? What do we hold on to? And so we were talking about, that whole thing of reception. How do people who are not of color see it? How do we see it as Americans, as opposed to those who are, in the UK or from around the world, from Australia? we were talking about it for a while last night, looking and thinking about this whole idea of, like Octavia Butler said, when you look at a character that looks like you and you begin to understand that the whole background and the garbage and that baggage we put with it isn't there, what does that do to you? How do you relate? Can you change your mindset? And which I think, for me at least, in looking at Doctor Who, there's this sense of, wow, we get to play. We get to say, it's no longer tied to the slave ships that came to Brazil or to America or wherever, But then there's so what's their backstory? What is their origin story? How do you see what I'm saying? It's really kind of interesting for us, fascinating.
Well, it's great because you get to drop your baggage. The problem with discrimination is baggage, and that you go into things sometimes guarded in a way that makes it maybe hard to suspend disbelief, because you go, oh yeah, that never would happen, or he's gonna die. I know he's gonna die. But then here we have in the High Council of Gallifrey is a general. And she happens to be a dark-skinned woman, and she happens to be a woman, but she's a general. So, what does it take to become a general of their High Council? This is a galaxy universe traveling race. They can travel through alternate dimensions. Who knows what exotic technology they possess? And this is one of the people in their command structure. So what you get to do in that moment, it's like I was saying to you last night about Dwayne Jones in The Night of the Living Dead. You see this powerful protagonist come in, and you get to go, oh, he's the hero. Okay, good. And so then you just get to jump in. You get to be part of the experience. Doctor Who becomes yours now, because you're not sitting up there going, okay, well, that character is going to be the guy standing in the background. You can see yourself and you can see them engaged in an important part of the arc of the story.
Yeah. And then that whole thing, John, about I was reading some fandom comments, and I was trying not to, right, the last several weeks, and so it's like, so are they women or of a different race because they committed suicide or sacrificed themselves, so the regeneration is different, and some of the theories in terms of how you got these people who were of different color or different gender. And I thought, well, at least we're all kind of putting it in there and tracing the alternative universes and trying to put the threads together. So, yeah.
No, definitely. It definitely has been an interesting ride the last couple of years, and even the last decade or so, in terms of character representation. And this is actually a good segue into your thoughts about the 13th Doctor, her companions through her run. And in particular, I wanted to get your thoughts, both of your thoughts, on a specific episode, which I thought was very powerful and very moving. That's Rosa, the Rosa Parks episode. And your thoughts were, what did you feel when you saw that episode, the history being represented that way? And did you think it'd ever be shown on Doctor Who, of all things?
Sorry, I didn't mean to go so no. We always think of American history and African American history as ours. We never think of the impact, We always think it's ours. And yet when you look at that whole thing with the dialects and the fact that there's that tie into fascism that's been made time and time and time again, I look at the purposefulness of the writers. But I wonder how many people got it. Because it's American Black history. What do you think?
Well, but we have to think of Rosa Parks in the sense of the larger dimension that she represents, because other people of African ethnicity, of other cultures, and other people in general, other races for that matter, have seized onto her because they understand what she's doing, the sacrifice that she made, the importance that she represents. The civil rights movement is a precursor to many other progressive movements. And so they're able to look at her in a way that, for as much as she is a Black woman, they can kind of divest that away from a condition. And I feel that's what the Doctor Who episode does. It looks at her from a human condition. You know, the beauty of the Doctor is the Doctor doesn't. Race is insignificant to the Doctor because it doesn't really matter. This is a primate. It's a human. It's not a Gallifreyan. It doesn't have two hearts. So he's able, but it's a living being that he can respect and admire. And so here it is. He has pardon me, has an appreciation. And thus Rosa Parks has that appreciation. You know, like you say, for us Black people, we kind of sort of hold on to her because she's ours. Mm-hmm. But because of what she did and how it affected so many different movements, how it affected so many different people who aren't necessarily African American, she kind of she becomes transcendent. And Doctor Who evidences that. It shows that. It says here's a character for, because he's space-time history. And as the series started out, it was about visiting different points in history. Here's a figure from Earth history. Here's this important figure. She's a woman, and she's done this important thing. She didn't start a war. She didn't go fight some great battle. She simply said no. And the appreciation of that comes through, and it reads through that episode.
Okay. I guess I don't want everyone to take on our mythos in America, right? They teach our kids that she was this old Black lady who sat down on a bus and she was tired. And there's this whole mythos that's around. She wasn't the first one, right?
No, she's not.
And then looking at that, and you look at the reaction when she gets arrested. I mean,
but
I guess I don't want everybody to take on our mythos, John. And our guilt. Let me put it that way. And our guilt and the shortened version that we teach our kids. That's problematic. I'm glad that they fleshed it out so much and avoided some of the stereotypes, which was nice. Yeah.
But I have to throw this in real quick because I think it's very important. It's a thing to consider. Rosa Parks was involved in things that were civil rights movements. It's like what is called the New Negro movement, which is what we call the Harlem Renaissance. Mm-hmm. She was involved in doing things that were protests long before the whole bus thing.
Yeah.
This was her movement. It's her philosophy. You have to realize this is a woman who became a Buddhist later in her life because of her social consciousness, because of her philosophy. And so for as much as it may be about, she's one of us. She's one of ours. We're holding on to her. We have to acknowledge a thing that's important in what she did, a thing that she may not have realized until much later that was presented to her by other people. She did a thing that was important for humanity. Mm. And if we think of Doctor Who as a series, the Doctor's perspective, I keep saying his, but we have to kind of genderless it. The Doctor's perspective is the importance of humanity, the value of humanity, the diversity of humanity. And so in many respects, as much as Rosa is ours, she is for the ages. She is a historical figure. This is why she's in the the Hall of Heroes in the Capitol, because of the thing that she did has a larger dimension than just for the civil rights movement of African Americans. It's about a human being who stood up to oppressive forces and said no. That's what the Doctor does all the time. He says no to oppression. He says no to bullies. He does it all the time.
But there, okay, I'll just say anyway. But there was this the sort of shift in the storyline of love and brotherhood, and I don't know.
Mhm.
I have issues.
Okay.
Fair enough. So,
Okay.
sticking with the 13th Doctor theme, obviously it was a huge shift going from a man to a woman playing the lead role. What did you both think about that change, and how have you embraced the current 13th Doctor?
Well, again, like I said, there's this shift of love and family, my fam. Yeah, Doctor Who. I don't know. It doesn't. It's uncomfortable for me. Um, just a little bit uncomfortable. It just seems like she tries to push off, her femaleness into another kind of agenda. And I know Doctor Who is about love for humanity and everything. The way she expresses it sometimes for me is just problematic.
I enjoyed the provocation of it because for
Okay.
so long the role was a man's role, an older white man's role, and it was very much this is what the Doctor is, deal with it. It's not going to change. This is what it is. And so now sometimes it's important in anything, in any story, in any saga, in any franchise, to push your audience a little bit. Because again, if we're bringing in these diverse elements, which they started doing kind of during that Eccleston period till now, they started putting in these elements. And the fear is oh, they're politicizing it, they're bringing all this stuff that's in. No, great science fiction, to go back to the day the Earth stood still, great science fiction always tests you, pushes you a little bit. Great stories do that. The story of, I'm a classically trained actor. Shakespeare's my thing. Othello as a character is not a conventional Shakespearean. He's not a conventional Elizabethan character. He's kind of diametrically opposed to a lot of the things that are important to their world. But yet he is the protagonist. He's a powerful figure. He's a tragic figure. And it forces you to break out of your comfort zone and see things in a different way. And I feel like this new Doctor is doing that. And I like that. I like my science fiction to wake me up a little bit, to snap its fingers in my face and say, hey, don't become complacent. Science fiction has always been about, or science fiction fantasy, has always been about thinking beyond the mode of the day, or a preset limit, or beyond some sort of easy trope. So I enjoy this character. And I know she's going to test me a little bit, and I'm okay with that.
It seems like she's that blend of the Matt Smith. Seems like they just passed over the other Doctor Who, a female, male Matt Smith. So for me, in thinking about some of the things that she does, she's trying to establish like a sisterhood with the TARDIS. I mean, does the TARDIS see her soul, and does the TARDIS still love her, but the gender's different? And I don't know. I had, like I said, for me it was okay. Well, no wonder the TARDIS, kicked her out and just went away for a while. I was like, yeah, I'd probably do that too. I was like, you're not the Doctor. No way. I'm not having this.
Yeah.
After all these male incarnations, all of a sudden there's a female. So so there's an undercurrent of uneasiness and suggested fluidity of gender, and she still has that real quirky sort of arrogance. And how do men see that arrogance as opposed to women? It's like when Laura Croft came along, there were a lot of people who were going, I don't know about this female, adventure hero. And I kind of gleaned some of that reaction from people, although apparently the ratings went up when she first appeared. That was a big change, for everything else that had happened in response prior to that. So I guess people wanted a change, but then the ratings dropped. So I guess people are wrestling with it too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, speaking of changing things up, one of the things I really have enjoyed during her time was discovering that there were even more doctors than we knew about. And one of them was Joe Martin. How
The
did you?
Fugitive of
Yeah,
Jatoon, and the fact that the implication is, because the 13th Doctor's going, wait, I don't remember you. I have no memory of you. And you go, yes. So a being who can travel through multi dimensions and times is questioning the potential prospect that there are aspects of itself that it doesn't know about. I present to you the War Doctor.
yeah,
I know they want to call him the Ninth Doctor, but what is he? What does he represent? This is the guy that destroyed Gallifrey.
Yeah.
What is he? And he started a massive war that destroyed all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of one of those things where, Joe Martin's thing comes in and says, yes, I'm a part of yourself that you don't remember. And I love that. I felt like I said, okay, that's it. We're off to the races now.
And I
this show's get good.
Why was she not there at the end when, he tried to save Gallifrey after having, killed everybody and suspended it in its own different little pocket dimension? Why did she not show up then? What? So I was thinking, okay, you got to put her in the storyline somehow. Alternate universe, alternate dimension, something. Give us some backstory. I'm just lost with this character.
As a fan of quantum mechanics, as a student of string theory, you must understand that there are alternates, even to the alternates. So you can have a main storyline with thousands of alternates, and each of those alternates have alternates. So, as much as I know that they're doing their level best to keep the story consistent and to create a kind of overarching story, there's always room for a little pocket dimension that we didn't expect the unexpected. Doctor Who is always messing with us on some level. You watch some episode and you're going, what's going on here? So I don't expect them not to do that in the context of the story. And plus, they're new writers, and we want them to be free to be able to put their stamp on that universe. So I'm willing to be open to it. If the writing is good, I'm willing to be open to them trying something new or introducing a wrinkle in the plot lines that I didn't expect or anticipate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Valid. Okay.
Yeah, people I've spoken to either really loved the direction it went to or really hated it. There didn't seem to be anywhere in between. But as Ian said, though, they do want to put their stamp on the show. We want to keep it fresh as much as possible. And this was a shocker. Plain and simple, it was a shocker.
And then they teleport her without the TARDIS. You're going to love this. Grabs her hand and, But there was, and I'm sorry, I forget the episode. There was a Time Lord in one of the previous Doctor Who incarnations in which there was the Time Lord appeared and he said, oh, well, we discarded using a TARDIS ages ago. But it's the only one that I've seen, and I should have written down the episode. We discarded using TARDIS a long time ago. So they plopped that there, which, was like a spoiler, I suppose, an accidental spoiler for this particular Time Lord, another dimension, whatever. Okay, yeah.
But as typical with most sci-fi shows, the writers throughout their histories are always writing themselves into corners and then trying to figure out how to get out of it. So
this will be a good one.
Talking about Star Trek and Star Wars. Oh, we wrote ourselves in a corner. How do we get out of this one? Okay, I know.
And that's where the alternate universe answer usually comes in.
Exactly. The mirror universe shows up and everyone has mustaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something cheesy or, just that little slight distinguishing thing to let you know you are in an alternative universe.
Now, it's time to put you two on the spot.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. As both old and new Doctor Who fans, which version do you prefer most?
Oh.
Well, that's tough.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
Tom Baker is always going to be my doctor. He's my doctor, and I love him and adore him. But you got to realize when you watch some of those episodes, they're not, some of them are not as good as they could be. They got problems.
Yeah.
And then I got a thing for Peter Capaldi. I kind of wish he would have been doctor longer. That's hard, but I don't know. I guess I got to stick by my fourth doctor. But I really like the new series, and I like some of the newer doctors as well. So, but yeah, I'm swearing my allegiance to Tom Baker.
Yeah, I do like Tom Baker.
He's my doctor.
I still, though, the David Tennant, maybe a little
David
too
Tennant.
quirky, but I like the Matt Smith Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Some of
There's something about
episodes
him.
are good.
Yeah, and the stories were there, and for me too. As I said, I just suspend belief anyway. I still have that kid thing of, oh yeah, that works. But for him, he was so real. He would show emotion, and the fact that he could still look at the war doctor, and talk to him, when it's like, yes, but you didn't do it in the name of Doctor Who. Doctor Who is about something more than what you did and your choices. But he's aware of him. He's aware that there's that part of him, and the dialects constantly remind Doctor Who in various episodes, but you're a lot like us. You have led to total destruction. You have led to people being to sacrificing themselves. You kill. You are alone. And so there's this. They're like foils, and it's really kind of cool to see. But I like the Matt Smith. I'm gonna have to just put my chips down and say, yeah, Matt Smith.
Well, there's one Matt Smith episode that I love and adore, which is Vincent and the Doctor.
Oh, yes.
That's classic Doctor Who. It's the best of what this series has to offer. It is a great episode besides, and it's one of my favorite artists. So, like I said, I'm going to hold my Tom Baker.
There is no wrong answer in this forum.
Hold the Baker.
I started with the Ninth Doctor. I can honestly say that for the longest time, the 10th Doctor was my doctor. But then I have a soft spot for Matt Smith because I actually was in London when his first episode premiered. So
no wonder.
That's memorable for me. But my doctor now is Peter Capaldi.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because he had some of the best lines I've ever heard in any TV show. Some of the things that he said in some of those episodes. And I've always made the joke that as his hair grew, his doctor became more and more epic. So by the time the Christmas special came out, if his hair alone had been suggested to be the new doctor, I would have voted for it.
You see, my doctor has big hair too. I feel like the bigger the hair, the closer to the universe. So maybe Capaldi, his consciousness grows with his hair.
Yeah.
But the episode where the aliens are invading the Earth and they take it over Britain, and there's a war that's going on, and he has a number of different things of the Doctor's perspective on war. There's one particular quote, it's escaping me right now, but it's really him making a commentary on war about, someone saying we got to destroy the village to save it. He's like, well, it's almost like he says, to paraphrase, you're destroying the village though. Why are you doing that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta admit, I sort of looked at the ninth and was like, nah, he's not my cup of tea. Seventh, not. Yeah, okay, maybe because of that, greatest show in the galaxy with the rapper in it, and Capaldi reminds me of Sam Elliott for some reason. He just has that body type of, I could see him out on a Western plain with the coat and the jacket and silhouette. And I don't know, it just does something that nah. So I'm going to stick with Matt Smith.
Well, and one of the things with the Capaldi story, you got to think this is a person who grew up, who was a Who fan, who got to play Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ultimate fantasy. Is here's one of your favorite characters, and you go up and you get to play it. You get to embody that role and add whatever. You're part of the legacy, the 50-year legacy that is Doctor Who. So that's also kind of a feather in his cap, in my estimation.
Yeah, and what I really liked about Peter as well is that he acknowledged the importance of the past by cosplaying basically as the first Doctor, because that was his Doctor, and making it easy for those who wanted to cosplay him by choosing clothing that was relatively inexpensive, so that way you didn't have to spend $200 to recreate this piece of clothing or not.
Yeah.
Well, everyone has their favorite clothing, so why wouldn't Doctor Who have his favorite clothing? Maybe there's something he wore in his fourth incarnation or in his third incarnation that he wanted to keep, so he brought it back. He's only thousands of years old.
I do love the clothing. I do love, putting that personal stamp with the clothing and having the Doctor regenerate instead of slipping in a new person and he doesn't regenerate. You know how we do in America a lot of times. Hi, and now we have so-and-so playing this character. We didn't tell you about it. It reminds me of the Fresh Prince, right? All of a sudden you have a new mom. Well, I love the idea of the regeneration. It gives you an opportunity, to kind of grow with this new personification of the character. I like that as a plot strategy. I really do. I like that as a plot strategy.
Oh, so sweet. This is another wonderful segue into the next one.
Yeah.
If Delores and Ian were made showrunners tomorrow, what kind of episodes would we see, and who would you cast as your first Doctor?
I thought about that. Who would I love to see play Doctor Who? And I immediately, believe it or not, I'm sorry, but I had a couple of people in mind. I don't know if she'd come out of semi-retirement or not, but I would love to see Angelina Jolie play a Doctor Who. I would really love to see Angelina Jolie play a Doctor Who. Either Angelina Jolie, and then I thought, well, okay, so who else would I like to see? And believe it or not, I thought, what would The Rock do? I just thought of these atypical kinds of characters. What would The Rock do with a script like that? Because he has comedic range,
he's got
as well as dramatic range. So that, I thought of those too.
Well, my two are kind of quirky. Is it do they have to be? Can it be living or dead? Because I have two people that I want to use.
You can suggest anyone you want.
I think Patrick McGoohan would have made a very interesting Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Because if you think about The Prisoner as a series, he's always turning things on their heads. And he's always sort of 2-3 steps ahead of other characters in the story, which Doctor Who often is. He's doing some crazy thing and we're like, why is he doing that? Why is he going to the cookie jar? Oh, because that thing's in there. Oh, that's why he's doing that. So I feel like he would have brought something very unique and unusual to it, and again keeping people guessing. And my other choice is Tilda Swinton.
Oh yeah,
because there's an androgynous element to her as an actor, and I feel like again playing into this thing of being something that's the other, because Doctor Who is the ultimate other. Even to his own race, even to the Gallifreyans, he's the other. And so she's very good at playing roles where she steps outside of the expectations of who she is and what she's supposed to be. And so that's who I would cast. Those are my two choices. If I was going for the male counterpart, it'd be McGowan. And if I'm going for the female counterpart, it would be Tilda Swinton.
So, John, if I may, can I put you on the spot? Who would you choose?
Oh, my wife and I have gotten into arguments about this. But if I could choose one actor, especially after watching some of his work in the last several years, Idris Elba.
Oh, I thought about him. I did think about him.
Yeah.
And Tilda was the other option that my wife had suggested, which I also thought was a wonderful option as well, if you wanted to go female again. Beyond that, I mean, it's just a standard fare. Another person that we've talked about is Sam Hewitt from Outlander. I mean, you definitely bring a different role, and he'd be getting back to more of the Matt Smith, David Tennant kind of doctor, potentially. So, I mean, it's really up to them to decide the direction that they would want to go in. And Sam would just be fun because we've never had a ginger doctor. So
as Matt Smith says, oh no, I'm still not ginger.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and if I had one other choice, because she is so quirky, Lucy Liu.
Ooh.
She is so quirky at times that I think she could fill out that whole role with something, that's almost tangible, but really quirky.
Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. So what kind of episodes would you as showrunners like to see produced? I mean, we can go just about any direction.
I definitely would love to see something in the vein of The Girl in the Fireplace, which I think is a brilliant and well-written. Get Neil Gaiman to write more episodes. Get him back in the series. we need that guy, and we need someone who writes stories like he writes stories. Kind of to take from the Star Trek thing when they go to the Tribbles, the Trouble with Tribbles, Trials and Tribulations. I wanted to maybe go back to an earlier Who. Maybe they could redo the pyramids of Mars, but do it from another perspective. I mean, the Doctor's always going back, checking on himself. So revisiting things from the previous, so introducing a newer audience, because we got to realize a new audience of Whovians are coming up now.
True.
So introducing them to some of the things of the previous that made the series great. So, I mean, and they only have 50 years of continuity. They only have tons of history. So why not revisit some of the history? Maybe there's a culture the Doctor went and visited a long time ago. Let's see how they're doing now. To use Star Trek again. Sorry, I'm getting all Star Trek here. Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan is the revisiting of Khan and what happened to him when they stuck him on this planet and thought he was going to be okay. And he realized, no, he's not. And now he's a terror. So I feel like it's kind of what they're doing now with Joe Martin, where they're doing a thing with the Cybermen. They're bringing that element back. They're going, the Cybermen are always there and they're always around. So, revisiting things, but not overusing them. We were talking about this last night. It's kind of one of these things where, when in doubt, stick the Daleks in there. When in doubt, stick the Cybermen in there. It's like that's flabby. It's flabby writing. It's like no. You have an entire universe you can populate. Surely there's some stuff you can come up with that we haven't anticipated. New ideas, flesh them out.
Yeah, I think I would like maybe a kind of Journey's End kind of thing, but I would like to see it go on with an alternative universe, and it's suggested a little bit where you would see Gallifrey in a totally alternative universe continuing on.
Yeah.
Right? Just continuing on and
Are we-
encountering another race and realizing when they thought they were the ultimate that they were just scratching the tip of the iceberg, and there are more alternate elite superiors, so that they begin to look at themselves in the context of the fabric of various universes. That's what I would like to say.
to throw this in real quick, oftentimes it's really bad when they do the origin stories. It's like with the Kryptonians in DC, where they went and figured their origins. But I really wouldn't have a problem if they had if it was well written, a series about the origins of the Gallifreyans.
A unified series.
Sure.
There's like a couple, I think. There's the one with the.
Where did they come from? At what point did they realize they could travel through time? How did they gain their perspective of alternate dimensions? There are lots of great stories involved in that. And granted, heck, you could even have Doctor Who sort of pass through every now and again. There's some great crisis. Doctor Who comes in and helps them out. Then he gets back in the TARDIS and gets the heck out of Dodge. But it's this race plays a critical role in the heart of this universe and of this being that we admire and respect. So what made them what they are? And if they even are stuck in time in that point in time where they're stuck, what's happening to them now?
Yeah, that's what an ongoing, and a look at, and I can't remember the episode, but there was the whole thing of origins where there were the three who overcame, I guess it was the queen of this mystic cult who cursed the Gallifreyans so that they couldn't have children, right? And so there was the one Gallifreyan who harnessed time, basically, and then the other one who harnessed the ability to rejuvenate, without having to have procreation. And that third one in the one story, and I forget the story, I'm sorry, John, I forget the one it is. The third one happened to be actually Doctor Who. And that whole mythos story, I was like, so wait, does this go into what we look at now? Or is this part of the comic book, series that they had, the graphic novel series? Are they going to put these two together? Because it's not really consistent. You see where, who steals the TARDIS, but then, like we were saying with the 14th or 13th Doctor of Color, if there is a pre-TARDIS, then is there like a pre-Gallifrey before this whole mythos began? And John, I wish I could think of the I didn't write it down, the name of the episode or the storyline, but I was amazed because it doesn't seem to coordinate with everything.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're almost out of time. This sounds like a perfect panel for our convention in October.
Oh, okay.
So I want to go ahead and thank you, Delores and Ian, for a very stimulating and fun talk on Doctor Who today. And if both of you are interested, we definitely would like to have you participate in our convention this year. That's one wonderful potential topic. But there's other things that I know that you may want to cover, and we are more than open to extending the invitation to.
Oh, thank you. That origin myth and looking at the audiobooks, maybe, and comparing the audiobooks with the graphic novels, as opposed to, because I'm still trying to put some of that together and thinking of what we have and some of the lost Who tapes that still haven't shown up. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot I still need to know and be able to remember and try and piece it together. So thank you. I would love to.
I would be honored, and the hope is maybe even having an opportunity of sort of watching an episode or watching some Who stuff, maybe older Who compared to newer Doctor Who, and see what we think, see how it's evolved, what has changed, what is now, and what was still good in the past, what maybe isn't so good now. But yes, I am excited. That'd be wonderful.
Well, that's great to hear. And again, thank you both for being with us here today. Our patrons will definitely be interested in hearing what you have to say at the convention then.
Great.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Whovians and SD WhoCon fans, again, we want to thank Delores and Ian for joining us today. And we look forward to hosting them at the convention this year, whether it be virtually or in person. And again, I want to thank everybody for watching the video today and wish you a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.